Okay, yeah, decent amount to talk about this week. The first of which I'll mention, sort of the easiest to talk about, version 1.1.2. Oh, excuse me. Of the curriculum has been released and pushed to the site. This is sort of a very, very small update, just included a new stage for the Git lesson. Yeah, Lisa's getting her kids prepped for school, so I don't think she's gonna stop by, which is fine. So 1.1.2 curriculum is released and it's out. It's just basically a new stage for the Git lesson. This is sort of a continuation of the lesson that we've been working on, so that's been pushed. The long-standing PR that I've been working on for weeks, I merged it. Figured it was time. I was kind of running out of to-dos. I had a set of tasks that I wanted to accomplish in the PR, and I accomplished those. And then as I went through the implementation, I had a whole bunch of like to-do comments in the code base. So I did that and went through and basically grepped for them and knocked them out and added tests and just basically kept grinding away at it until I realized, hey, I'm kind of done really with the original intention of the PR, which actually that's not even fair to say. The original intention of the PR was much smaller than this, but basically with the intention that it turned out to be. And I felt pretty good about it. Actually, I felt pretty good that the like the antidote CLI tool, for instance, was in a good place, which we'll get to in a second. Basically the observability instrumentation, so being able to understand where things are from a tracing perspective, I think is really good. So I felt really good about it, and merged it. I don't know when, but sometime last week. Looks like I did it fairly soon after the last stand-up, which actually makes sense. I've made a bunch of other changes since then. Basically, this was sort of like the main restructuring, and then I did open other PRs for smaller, sort of more pointed features since then. So if you want to take a look at the changelog in master, that kind of shows the progression of things. Yeah, I'm feeling really good about version 0.6.0. It's got a lot of new features. It's basically a totally revamped sort of data model and way of thinking. I'll sort of leave it at that for now, because I think probably certainly what I'll end up doing is, once we do publish 0.6.0, and especially as we push it to the main NRE Labs site, I'll be doing many blog posts on the new version and what's different about it, because I think if you look on the surface, it's not immediately clear, because a lot of it was refactoring. And I know that's not the sexiest thing to talk about, but hopefully I'll be able to make it clear why we did those things and why it's better. So yeah, stay tuned for blog posts to go into more detail there.
Do you plan to include some way to test it a la make hack or the former self-medicate?
Yeah, so self-medicate will again still be around. Once this version comes out, what I'll do is I'll merge my PR that that I've already shown and was working on to effectively make self-medicate work again, because self-medicate hasn't been updated since we did the whole web SSH stuff. So that'll still get done. But in terms of other things we can test, you said make hack, which is an antidote web concept, right? So if you I actually have antidote web open right here. I'm running it.
I remember that it's the refactoring has a positive impact, making it more easily testable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I can imagine
so there's probably a matter of documenting in a proper way so that people can replicate.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there'll be documentation on ways that you can run this. But yeah, right now in Antidote Web right now, I have it configured. If you run make hack, it actually expects that the API is available effectively, at the local host. So if you wanted to do some testing with that, you definitely could do that. Um, and in that case, what you would do is you would run Antidote D with a configuration of, basically only running the API server, and then you would use that anti-CTL tool that I told you that I showed, I think a few times back, right?
By the way, Matt, I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. Maybe it would be interesting to have a demo made with ASCII-doc. Oh shit, what's the name?
ASCII Enema.
ASCII-Lema, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I can definitely do that. My long-term goal actually is also to build actual NRE Labs lessons on using these CLI tools as well.
I
Um,
see. Yeah.
yeah, which um, let me get to the next subject. I mean, maybe this will be more compelling. But yeah, basically, yes, all of this is possible. At this point, the code is all there. It is just a matter of documentation, which I know that it's kind of a cliche that comes last, but it's how it's happening. I'm sorry. Okay. So yeah, no, let me get to this last subject because I think this might be even more along those lines. So what I want to do, another one of the reasons I merged the PR was because I didn't want to dwell on it myself for any extended period of time. My goal actually was to get it merged and then to get it out to people to actually use, and not and in this case I'm talking about the antidote CLI tool. I'm not talking about the actual server side of things. I'm talking about the new CLI tool for creating lessons. So I'll I'm trying to do sort of one-on-one engagements with people to help me with this. Once I've reached out to a decent number of people in the community individually, I'll do something like a blog post or a tweet maybe and get sort of the general public on board. But for now, I'm sticking with sort of a one-on-one, letting people know about this. Basically, what I wanted to do is I wanted to get the new antidote tooling into people's hands without having to do a formal release, so that we can get feedback to see what the user experience is like. And so this is it. If you go to this forum post, it explains sort of what we're doing. You can clone a test curriculum, although I am actively working on converting the NRE Labs curriculum, which should work as well, but this is a simpler one. So this is just for testing. Basically, I've precompiled binaries, and I precompile them every night. So I have a Stackstorm rule that automatically compiles everything for all these different architectures every night. And so you can download and it's based off master. So you can download the one that's relevant for you, and it'll be the one that compiled for that for master that last night. And you can see I'm compiling for not only Linux but also Windows and Mac OS. So if you have an operating system that doesn't fit into one of those, please let me know. But I feel like that probably covers most people. And yeah, the thing that I'd like to help testing is effectively the new creation wizards. So Antidote Lesson Create and Antidote Collection Create. I provided a little bit of pointers to like the documentation, which we do have on the object reference. So and that'll be improving as well. But yeah, I kind of wanted to get people to play around with the new creation wizards and provide feedback here in the forums, and that'll help, I think, make the version that comes out at 0.6.0 I think a little bit more. It'll improve it. Because right now the only person that's had any influence over it is me, and I don't like that. I would prefer to get external feedback for the user experience. And what I'm doing is I'm pre-compiling everything and putting on the instructions here so that people don't have to know anything about the code. They just have to, effectively just use the tool. And so, yeah, I could probably build one of those ASCII Enema things for this. Which I'll probably still end up doing, but I think also, like I said, I also want to build an actual NRE Labs lesson that uses the tool, the antidote tool, to create a lesson, and that way people understand, that process and can get walked through it.
Yeah. I can't promise much because life these days is a bit shaky. But I'm supposed to be on vacation next week, so I may have some time to test all of this.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah, I'm not in a major rush to like get 0.6.0 implemented. I would say probably I will want to get it released within, I don't know, the next few weeks. So nothing like in the next few days or so. So there's still plenty of time to get feedback in about feedback in before we have to even think about releasing the code. And even after that, obviously, we can always just roll that feedback into a future version anyway. That's just as easy to do. So it's I don't think there's a huge rush. My goal here was to sort of start setting the precedent for getting external feedback like this without requiring that people get into the code. And me pre-compiling everything and putting all the instructions here, I think was a good way to do that. So yeah,
thanks. That sounds very good to me.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully more like that. Um, I think it'll be good to get feedback. I'm a big believer in that. Getting nice early feedback. Okay, and then finally, plans to postpone the survey date. I just put this in here because I had earlier effectively like still planning to implement the survey. I think the plan is to just wait for now. I'll get in touch with Lisa and see what her thinking is on this. But I believe the plan right now is to wait, just because it's unlikely that we're going to get a ton of engagement. Probably keep the agenda item in here just to discuss it if people think differently. But for now, I think we're just gonna wait on doing a user survey. So
Have you had any figures of the site load since confinement or since the pandemic is global? Is there
yeah,
any
it's
impact on people having leisure time and testing stuff, or otherwise too busy with regular business and not having time to learn new stuff?
I don't think there's been a huge impact. I will say that the usage on the whole is up slightly. I don't know if it's statistically significant. I'm just eyeballing it here. Obviously I can dig in more detail later, but eyeballing it here, 360 over the past 7 days, lessons launched is higher than normal, I would say, but not by orders of magnitude. So
Mhm.
certainly nothing certainly nothing approaching the usage that we saw when we relaunched the site earlier in the year, which had nothing to do with coronavirus. It had everything to do with just us relaunching the site and
I
getting.
think I'm a bit, I'm thinking about the context of formal education, labs in the university, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And yes, there is probably some need for remote labs that people didn't anticipate so far. And maybe they are just not aware that they could direct their students to a lesson on NRE Labs
mm,
because it's probably only known in circles of professionals, I would say, not instructors and teachers and
yeah,
academia.
yeah. Lisa and I kind of talked about like how can we be more, what what is it appropriate for us to be more verbal and vocal about NRA Labs? We I put a little bit of in the 1.1.2 blog, the release blog. I put a little blurb in there that basically said like, hey, we know that not everybody has all the time on their hands because we're all at home, which sounds easy, but it's actually not, because now you're having to do everything all at once. So what you need actually, I think, is a learning environment that doesn't make any assumptions about your knowledge and the way you set things up. It just does all that stuff for you. I think we're well positioned to help there. Um, but
Mm.
uh,
I would
but in
say
terms of
too that
sustaining, like in terms of doing that proactive, outreach, we haven't. I don't think we've reached a good conclusion on how to do that. But
yeah.
I'd like to do it. I'd like to do it. I don't want to come off insensitive. You know what I mean? That's the one thing I don't want to do.
Mm. Yeah, you never know what people are facing and how this could be interpreted. There's so much marketing,
Yeah, yeah.
like we value your privacy, which means, and here it's we hope you're safe and please buy something new.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. We value your privacy is a great way of saying, "Oops, we screwed up, and we don't actually care about your privacy."
Mm.
Yeah. No, that I mean nothing that egregious, but yeah, basically I think NRE Labs is a useful tool in these times just because it's optimized for, simplicity and speed. Just we take on a lot of that complexity, but yeah, if you have ideas for how to actually verbalize that and get the word out about that, without sounding like we're, sort of, I don't even know if taking advantage is the right word, because we're, it's not a paid service. So
Yeah, or, I don't know.
I just want to be excited. I don't want to dwell too much on it, but I just, if there's an opportunity for us to be sensitive while getting the word out, that's kind of the sweet spot I want to aim for.
I think from my perspective, so far, most of the training context or the academic context, people have just switched to Visioconf
Yeah.
like work. Sometimes flipped classrooms. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept. It's like doing much of what can be done in async mode and just keeping conf calls for some feedback, some quick interaction, instead of spending time in front of the students and discussing, obviously.
Hmm.
But most people haven't yet addressed the labs because or they rely on the old technologies like virtual machines, VirtualBox and stuff. So I'm not sure the cloud context or the remote desktop stuff is on the agenda of so many people. So it's too new, too uncertain. They don't have the knowledge or the know-how. So, and it's probably not. I don't want to deceive people. I mean, to promote too much if they're comparing that to a professional experience, what they could expect from a finished tool. We're not 1.2.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 I think it's a good idea though. We should probably do something like that. I'll take a stab at a draft, but I won't publish it. I'll bring it up on the next weekly call, or maybe send it out to the forums and
mm,
get feedback, and then we can publish it that way. Maybe Juniper can throw some marketing dollars behind it. Yeah, and if you have ideas for getting the word out to some of the educator circles, that would be cool too.
mm, not so many. Everyone is trying to find solutions for decentralized services like getting rid of Zoom or other privacy problematic solutions. And there is a big momentum on rolling out Jitsi or Big Blue Button instances and stuff like that. So most of the tech-savvy people are busy doing that.
Hmm.
And it's probably, it depends how long the confinement will last. I mean, if it's just 1 month, it's probably not good to try and attract people to new challenges. If it would last like 1 year from now, that would be a different problem. So now we could think about bringing more people on board and customizing solutions and stuff. But if it's all done mid-July, I mean, it's not worth.
Yeah, the reports I've seen are saying that it's not going to be done. We're going to go through waves of containment and
Mm.
You know what I mean? There's not going to be a point where everybody can just immediately return back to normal, because then it'll immediately start spreading again. It's going to come in waves for the next, I think,
Mm.
probably close to up to 2 years while a vaccine is actually developed and tested.
Or until everyone has caught it and there's no one left to
Yeah, yeah. Are you
contaminate.
when you do you know this is going way off topic for the stand up, but I'm just curious,
Yeah.
do you know if you get immunity when you actually catch it and recover?
So far, from what I've heard or read, they seem to be confident. Yeah.
Hmm, okay.
So there were a few cases back in the early uh, epidemic in China when they claimed that people caught it twice, but it was probably false positives on the first flu, and so they probably hadn't tested well, and so people thought that they were sick, but it was probably a different sickness, different virus.
Hmm.
But it's like there wasn't supposed to be young people sick, but we had a few cases where very young people problems. So it's not clear.
Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously, it's still we still don't want anybody to get sick, but I was just curious if
Mm.
those who do recover had a shot at immunity. Anyway, we'll see. I do one thing I forgot to bring up while I was talking before. I'll bring up shortly here. The this I have not gotten back to the point where this is automated. So I this is a uh, well, actually, never mind. I was going to say something about the PTR, but it's fine. For now, I just wanted to show kind of the new one of the features that I really like about the new platform. I've revamped the front end. Obviously, the front end needed to have a bunch of changes done to it to catch up to be compatible with the back end changes that I made. One of those is obviously as I've stated many times, we're not using lesson IDs anymore, numeric lesson IDs that are just sort of arcane. um, Moving to a concept of a slug, which is similar to what you would expect in a blog post. And by the way, on the like the production site, and I can even add this to like self-medicate and stuff. You can use things like Nginx rules to turn this into a pretty URL, so you don't have to have this like question mark kind of stuff. You can just use slashes. So we'll see if we need to do that later. But for now, I'm just keeping it simple. Lesson slug for this lesson is not 14 anymore, which is what it used to be. I think maybe 17. I can't remember. Now the identifier is this slug. This is get version control. And by the way, if you use the numeric ID or if you use lesson ID, like I gave a little bit of thought to old links. If there are like old links to lessons around and then you click those, what it'll do is it'll give you a message here where you can click this button to return to the catalog to find the actual correct URL. I thought about doing some aliases and maybe helping to like redirect to the appropriate lesson. I don't think that that's going to work. Even if I were able to get that working, it would be very fragile. I'd rather just fail outright consistently every time and return people to the catalog.
We're not
Simplicity.
supposed to have many links incoming.
Yeah, well, there's a few reasons for that. I think the complexity of trying to keep track of what lesson ID goes to what slug is problematic and also specific to the NRE Labs curriculum. So I would effectively have to bake NRE Labs specific logic into the front end, which I don't want to do. It would also be very fragile and problematic and just some other thing that could go wrong. And I would rather always show this error rather than maybe show another more cryptic error that's not helpful. And then the biggest reason is actually there are not a lot of links that have this, because most of the links that are out there that point to NRE Labs actually use the old domain, and we've been redirecting those to just nrelabs.io. So it's been stripping off all of this lab stuff anyway. So the only links that are around, I think, that have this lesson ID concept are things like the Ansible lesson. So Red Hat did a blog on the new Ansible lesson that we'll have to correct. And Sean, if you end up watching this video, I'll definitely be giving everybody a heads up before we actually go live with this new platform. So we're well off from having to do that, but yeah, we'll have to fix those links. I think there's probably some links on the NRE Labs site, maybe packet pushers as well. But basically, only links that have been published since the relaunch will be affected, which is a very small number, and those are very easy to fix. So I think for like the 0.0001% of people that get through, if there's maybe a link that I didn't know about, and you can see I was already looking at Google Analytics to see if there were any other links that might be pointing. So I'll stay on top of that. But the other thing that's I think a little bit more relevant, or maybe a little more interesting, is the oh shoot, did I put us in a broken state? Nope. Maybe. Oh, it's going to the new stage. There we go. Okay. So one of the things that I've found challenging with the curriculum as it stands, or really it's not really curriculum specific, but if you create a new lesson and the lesson guide is actually, this isn't specific to Markdown. Sorry, I know I'm presenting some pretty loosely formed thoughts, but I told you I'm tired, so sorry. Let me take a step back. Previously, when you loaded a lesson, and in this example, you would see sort of the title, the name of the stage or the part or the chapter, whatever you want to call it, and that was it. That was all you would see. And by the way, that text would actually come from the lesson guide itself, and so effectively, people would have to put in their own headers, H1, H2 in Markdown form. And then that would get translated to HTML, and then the web UI would show this here. In 0.6.0, what I'll be doing is or what we're already doing, it's already in the platform, is generating this stuff as part of the web UI. So it's no longer in the actual lesson guide. If you look at the lesson guide actually starts with this first paragraph. This is literally line 1 of the lesson guide that sits in the back of the loaded curriculum, and everything else is driven by the web UI. So the title is driven, it's derived from the lesson metadata file, as is the name of this part 2. You'll see I also implemented an authors field. So if you have no authors, this will show nothing. If you have one author, it'll show this, and if you have multiple, it'll say authors, and it'll say so and so and so and so and so and so. I've wanted to put this in here for a while because I wanted to give the impression that this wasn't just some curriculum that say one company like Juniper was building. I wanted to help people understand this is actually a community-driven curriculum. And another thing I did to help cement that was actually provide a lesson or edit lesson on GitHub button that points to the curriculum, which will have instructions and documentation for how to get started. So these are, I think, I think that this will bring a lot of consistency to the look and feel, because it's going to look a lot more consistent about how the how the lesson is being presented. It's going to all have this header information. It's going to be structured similarly, and so I'm really excited about that.
Matt, one question.
Yeah.
I don't think we discussed that since the rewrite. Is there any possibility already for translation of the interface?
Yes, actually, yes, there very much is. So if you go to, let me see, what's the best place to see this? Hold on one second. I want to take a peek at what I have. Antidote web. Yeah, I think this should work. All right, sorry, I'll share my screen again. So yes, if you go to Antidote Web, in the directory structure of so /source is where the actual web app is hosted or stored. If you go to package.json, you'll notice that Antidote Web is it depends on this is part of the rewrite that happened that we launched in January or February rather. Antidote Web is now no longer one single project. We actually have Antidote Web broken up into really three main projects. And then the Antidote Web project here provides all the structure and rolls them up into one sort of running container. But in terms of source management, in terms of source control, there's actually, well, really four different repos. There's still the Antidote Web repo that ties everything together. And it has our like templates and things like that. This is, by the way, all of this will be updated in the new architecture documentation that I'm working on. There are three, though, new repositories that we didn't have before, and those are listed here under dependencies. And so when you build Antidote Web using the makefile, makehack actually does this, by the way, automatically for you. It pulls down these three repos. And you'll see I have these temporarily set to go to a local path just for development. Normally, these get pulled directly from GitHub from master. Mm-hmm. But there are three, one of which is NRE styles. So this is what you might expect, basically a separate repo for managing CSS stuff. Antidote UI components is the vast majority of the actual logic. So it's a lot of the sort of, I'll say React hooks. It's using a different library, but it's effectively React hooks for driving the logic of the front end. And then there's Antidote Localizations. So if you go to say, I actually this file that's open right now because I was working on implementing something related to lesson videos. You'll notice that throughout the code of the front end, this is in the Antidote UI components, by the way. Mm-hmm. You'll notice that in the front end of the code, there are calls to this function L8N localization. And so at the top of the resource thing, you can see it's saying get L8N reader, and it's declaring that, and then it's calling that function with these identifiers, lab.guidance.buttons. And then it inserts a variable there. Mm-hmm. Then there's also like lab.guidance.buttons.exit.label. And so on and so forth. There's a bunch of, there's just a lot of calls out to this function L8N. These are localization strings. And so if you go to the Antidote Localizations repo, you'll notice that there is a directory bundles, and then inside of that en.js. And that effectively has basically all of the language on the site. Is broken out into these.
So is this compatible somehow with the GNU get text PO format and stuff like that? I'm not sure you're familiar with that.
I'm not. I've heard of it. I'm not familiar with it though, and I would also say probably not. This seems like a pretty JavaScript specific implementation.
Yeah, because. In terms of crowdsourcing, I would say the translation of interface, it helps sometimes to have something that is that can be distributed to people that are not able to code in JavaScript but know how to translate.
Sure.
But, well, I see that it shouldn't be too hard to edit this file, but...
yeah, well, I think in the case of adding a translation, it's really a matter of just adding a second file. So this is en.js for English. I would say probably the thing to do would be to create a new file like fr.js, for instance, and provide the French translation as an equivalent. So make sure you have all of these tags here. And the tags are in English. That's just how it is. But you can have the value for those tags be French, and yeah, as a result, and then in the web UI, we would have to figure out a way to identify which one to use. But yeah, we would just basically point to the fr.js bundle instead of the en, and yeah, and it should take care of the majority of the. I think there's almost no text now that isn't in one of these localization strings. Which is one of the things that Bitovi did for us. So before their work, my answer to you would have been, it's a lot tougher because it was all statically baked into the web app. But now I think we're in a really good place because everything's been abstracted.
Nice. Okay, so that opens a few venues for my students to contribute, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this especially given antidote localizations is a very simple repo. There's really not much to wrap your head around. You just go to this repo, and there's a single directory, and there's a single file in it. So yeah, for sure, it's. Um, I think of the areas to contribute at this point, it might actually be the simplest.
Yeah. So what's the package, the GIS library that is used?
Yeah, this is a tool chain I'm still learning about. This is the tool chain that Batovi selected to use. This is it uses npm,
Mhm.
so it's an npm thing. It's effectively a descriptor for an npm package.
Mhm.
And so if there are things that you want to do like automatically run tests or any build steps, you'd put it in here. This one's not as interesting because it's a pretty simple project. But if you look at say Antidote Web, that package.json is much more involved because it actually has things to do with like installing development dependencies, running build steps.
Mhm.
They actually have runtime dependencies like the localizations repo, for instance. So it's an npm sort of packaging related thing.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
I've not worked too much with my student on Eclipse Che and the Web IDE, so there's nothing much to report.
All right.
Um, Apart from that, I can't see anything.
Okay. Yeah. No worries on that. Just keep me posted. Let me know how I can help.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had a yes, I remember
Yeah.
a comment on Git. So I didn't watch the new episode and didn't check the new stage of the lesson on Git.
Yeah.
Um, are you planning to include something about graphical view of the repo of the branches, something like that?
It depends on what you mean by graphical.
I mean, I'm not sure, but I can think it could be possible to have some kind of web tool that would display the current state of the repository and its branches in a graphical way that could be rendered in web endpoint. You know,
Yeah.
so
Oh, yeah. That's certainly possible. Do you have a tool in mind? I don't use any graphical tool.
I
Yet.
I can't remember, but I remember there was some kind of tool that was written in JS and SVG, something like that, that you could launch from your command line, and that would open a window displaying the branches
Hmm.
graphically. And but actually, it was opening a new tab in your browser to display that. So I kind of think it could be embedded in the lesson so that you have one tab where you have the Git command line and another where you have a graphical visualization of what you're doing.
Yeah. That'd be kind of cool. Um, yeah. If you
Unfortunately,
have
I
a
can't
tool, let me
remember the
know.
name of the tool. So
Yeah, yeah. If you think of it, just let me know. I'll look into it because what we could do is we could have uh, an HTTP presentation open to the same endpoint because you can have two presentations of different types or even of same types if you wanted, but two different presentations open to the same endpoint. And so yeah, if we wanted to, we could probably figure out a way to do that. But yeah, I don't have any experience with graphical tools, so I'll need suggestions, I think, on that.
it's the kind of tools that you don't use, but you see it someday and you think, oh, it's interesting, and you don't take a bookmark, and then, oh, it's lost.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Alrighty. Well, this is a good one. We didn't have a discussion last week, so I think we both probably pent up a good amount of talking points and got through them. So this was a good hearty discussion.
And nice to see you safe.
Yes, yeah, same here. Same here. Stay that way.
Yeah, stay at home, people.
Yes, yes. I am also staying at home. Alrighty. Well, thanks, Olivier, and yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye.
Alrighty, later.